What is up, guys? Today we're going to be checking out the top 5 Nokia smartphones for every budget. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, first up is the Nokia PureView. So this comes in at about 600 bucks. You can find it even cheaper if you go on eBay. But this is a really nice phone. So it's got a glass back and aluminum frame. It is IP rated. And you do actually have a OLED display on here. That is 599 inches. So basically 6 inches. So 1440p display. 538 for the PPI, a very nice display. So you do have Android 10 on here with Android 1, so this is going to get updates in the future, no problem. Snapdragon 845, which is still excellent. You will still be able to play games on high along with the Adreno 630. Now, you don't have expandable storage on here, unfortunately, but you do get 128 gigs and 6 gigs of RAM. So the most interesting thing is the camera with this phone. So you do have a 5 camera setup. So you have a 5x 12 megapixel wide, and you have a 2x RGB and a 3x BW cameras. They all work simultaneously, and you have a TOF 3D sensor, which is very nice. So you also have 2160p video recording and a 20 megapixel selfie camera that also records in 2160p. Now, you do not have a headphone jack on here, and you also have NFC for mobile payments and also USB type C. You have a fingerprint scanner under the glass, which I love, and also a 3320 milliamp battery. And you also have 18-watt fast charging, but this phone also offers wireless charging as well at 10 watts. So if you want to go all out on a Nokia phone, this is going to be one of the best ones. Next is the Nokia 7.2. Now this is 350, so it's kind of in the mid-range. So you do have a glass back on here, a plastic frame. It's a very nice looking phone. You also have an IPS display, 6.3 inches, 1080p, 400 for the PPI. It's actually an always on display, which is great. And you do have Android 9 with Android 1. Of course, this will get Android 10, a Snapdragon 660 processor, along with the Adreno 512. So sort of a mid-tier kind of phone here. So we do have the micro SD support up to 512 gigs, 64 gigs of storage and 4 gigs of RAM on the base model. Now you have a triple camera setup, a 48 megapixel wide, an 8 megapixel ultra wide, and also a 5 megapixel depth sensor that shoots in 2160p. You also have that selfie camera that shoots in 1080p, and that is 20 megapixels. So this phone keeps the headphone jack, which is awesome. You also have NFC on here as well as USB type C. The fingerprint scanner is the physical one on the back. You have a pretty decent sized battery at 3500 milliamps, along with 10-watt fast charging. So this is overall a really good phone. I really like the design, a wider drop notch, and it's got some pretty decent specs. Now next is going to be the cheaper version, the Nokia 6.2. This is going to be at $250, and you also have a glass back on here as well as a plastic frame, IPS display, 6.3 inches, 1080p, 400 for the PPI, and that is also a always on display as well. You do have Android 9 with Android 1. This will get Android 10, and you also have the Snapdragon 636 processor along with the Adreno 506. So this does have micro SD support up to 512 gigs, 32 gigs of storage and 3 gigs of RAM, so pretty decent. You also have a 16 megapixel wide, an 8 megapixel ultra wide, and a 5 megapixel depth sensor, shoots in 2160p. You also have an 8 megapixel selfie camera that shoots in 1080p. This has the headphone jack, and you also have NFC on here as well as USB type C, fingerprint scanner on the back, 3500 milliamp battery with the 10-watt fast charging. So it is a pretty decent phone. If you don't want to pay that $350, then you kind of get slightly downgraded specs on this one. Now next is the Nokia 7.1. Now this is 200 bucks on Amazon. Links are down below. This has a glass back and aluminum frame, so as you can see, even though these are cheaper phones, they still have really good build quality, something that Nokia is known for. So you do have an IPS display, 5.84 inches, so a little small on the display, but I like smaller displays. 1080p, 432 for the PPI. This also has Android 10 with Android 1, so how awesome is that? You do have the Snapdragon 636, Adreno 509, and you also have micro SD support up to 400 gigs, 32 gigs of storage, and 3 gigs of RAM. Now this only has the dual camera setup, the 12 megapixel and the 5 megapixel depth sensor, so no ultra wide, and that also shoots in 2160p. You also have a 8 megapixel selfie camera that shoots in 1080p. And you also have a 3.5 millimeter jack on here as well. This does have NFC, which is awesome. USB Type-C, a 3060 milliamp battery with 18-watt fast charging. So this is overall a very solid phone for this $200 budget price point. So last is the Nokia 3.1 Plus. So this is the cheapest phone on the list, coming in at around $140. So this is a really good phone as well for the price. You have an aluminum back, aluminum frame. So as you can see, this thing is built like a tank. So you do have an IPS display, 6 inches. It is a 720 by 1440 display, 268 for the PPI. You also have Android 9 on top of Android 1, and this has the Helio P22 processor along with the Snapdragon 439, so it's pretty much kind of like a budget tier chip. You do have the micro SD support up to 400 gigs and also 16 gigs of storage and 2 gigs of RAM, so you're definitely going to want in micro SD with this. Now you also have a 13 megapixel camera and a 5 megapixel depth sensor on top of 1080p video recording, along with a 8 megapixel selfie camera that shoots in 720p. Now you have a 3.5 millimeter jack. This actually has NFC, and you also have the fingerprint scanner on the back with a 3500 milliamp battery and a 10-watt charging on here. So the Nokia X7 is also a really good phone too if you want to you know, have that little punch hole display. That's a really good honorable mention. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So thanks for watching. I will catch you guys in the next one.